we will now come to the short presentations of the panel leaders, and I will first ask the panel leaders of each group to make the presentation, and then they will also get something, you will see. And after this, we will make one presentation after the other, and afterwards we will have a general discussion. Everyone can ask questions to everyone to whom he wants, but we will then ask again the panel leaders, all the panel leaders here on the stage to join the general discussion. And we will start as usual with panel 1.
Tum 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 dum da da.
All right, Jackie. Heroes.
Yeah, we are the heroes.
We are the heroes.
Well,
Just for one day.
We're not the heroes just for one day, because the hero story is about who else saves the world.
Right.
And we have to save the world. We have to learn how to save the world and how to save the world with everyone else. It's not one hero.
We have to introduce ourselves.
Oh, surely. Right, who are you?
I'm Lars Nilsson. I'm a professor at Lund University. I was an engineer when I came here, but after being exposed to all these fantastic people in the panel, I'm now a recovering engineer.
I'm just recovering. I used to do energy efficiency and fuel poverty, but now I write stories. I'm Jackie Pett, and I'm semi-retired. It's ridiculous. Right.
All right, to the panel.
Yes.
Jackie did something like this.
No.
No.
No, because...
Because? What did we...
You press another button.
No, I press it, but then it takes 30... It takes 30 seconds to move into the next. There it is. Panel 1 can't save the world, but we can help the world save itself.
Great. Now, let's have a look at what we've been talking about all week. Yes, there's energy, efficiency, policies and potential. And there's also things like learning and technical and instruments and research and housing and consumption and heating and energy and design and high and important and standards and framework.
And make
social.
Love.
Make love.
Make love. There.
Not war. As long as it's not war. Mm-hmm. So that's what we came here to talk about, and now everyone was going to do. But we found out an awful lot of other things through our panel. There were all sorts of ways that things moved together. We started with Katie and her hero stories, and we learnt a lot. We then had Hans and his proverbs. And from that we took that we needed to talk about energy differently. We need to talk with a lot of people, because we finished on how are we going to move forward. How are we going to move forward and get people who don't really understand behaviour, but have suddenly come to the conclusion that we can't do policies, we can't do the technical, we can't do the superb, super efficiency appliance projects, we can't do Kevin, what are we doing? We can't push harder with our standards, because
never nudge.
It needs people. Nudge them. We need to get the people to come with us. Yeah. And to get the people to come with us.
It's interesting that targets weren't very prominent, right?
Because we don't aim at targets. What we do is we dream and we follow that dream.
Okay.
Right. So follow the dream, get out there. Yes, get your standards and your monitoring and your projects, but remember you have to bring the people with you. You don't do it to them, you do it with them.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I think I have to stand over here if I'm going to control this.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can move on.
Yeah, we move on. So you could say that the sort of common denominator, or
Long words.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, what brings the whole panel together
Yes.
is that it was very much about coordination and integration and getting coherence in many ways.
Yeah.
People interacting from different areas, like you see now.
Yeah.
So we need all this in standards we talked about, international standard coordination and integration. We talked about integration across disciplines necessary,
Meeting
transitions very important with coherence in those. And we talked about integrating technology and the social contexts, extremely important. Bundling utility services, integration across sectors, renovation schemes, and let's see. Multiple levels.
A little bit further along.
Okay, let's see what happened now.
We have the foundations of future energy policy. Ta-da! But what you really want is more than energy policy. What you want is everything policy.
And with that, we leave you. We leave them with that?
We leave them with that.
We leave them with that. Okay.
Well, I tell you what, give them one last slide.
Okay. Thanks and goodbye.
Stop. Okay, and it will be difficult to top that, but we will try. Starting with panel 2. Alex.
Good start. Okay, right, so we are here to give our reflections on panel 2. I'm afraid we haven't brought panel 2 with us, which maybe was a mistake, but we haven't done it. First of all, of course, we would like to thank all our wonderful speakers and our poster presenters. And we'd also like very much to thank all the people who attended our panel, who contributed to the very interesting discussions that we had.
Especially would like to know that everyone in our panel was brilliant. All were above the average.
Absolutely. We had a very wide variety of themes in our panel, and at a lot of different scales. So we're just going to give a brief summary of what some of the themes were. We had talks about national energy efficiency policy, which looked at reviews of existing policy, hopes for future policies, and new ideas around what national policy could do. We had several talks about energy in buildings, strategies for building renovation, and also interesting talks about professional and social contexts for buildings. So it wasn't just a technological analysis. The other themes that we had included policy making. We were looking at new frameworks for policies, people coming up with new ideas, how could we learn from the renewables market, things like that. And there was a lot of interest in people adopting policies from other areas, so very interested in learning from each other still, even after all these years of coming together at eceee. We also had quite a number of talks, as you would expect, on individual policy tools, so energy efficiency obligations, quite a lot on buildings and appliances standards and how that's developing across the world. And also some talks about subsidies, energy price subsidies, other kinds of subsidies, and training.
We are delighted to host presentations which focus on energy efficiency policies in really many countries and regions of the world. Thus, among developing countries, we talked about the member states of the European Union, collectively or individually. We talked about the United States and Australia. And we're especially interested to learn from transition economies in developing countries. For instance, we had presentations covering Western Balkans, Mexico, Russia, South Africa, and United Arab Emirates.
So to try and bring out some of the themes that that came out in our presentations and papers, we could say a general theme was people were trying to bridge gaps of different types. The first gap was one between reality and what could be said about reality, and this was a sad truth of our panel, that several of our authors were not allowed to tell the whole story of their findings because of political or organisational sensitivities, and that was rather sad that was the case. Nevertheless, we learnt something from them, but not perhaps as much as we could have. The next difference between reality was reality and then reality according to official reports, and it's not a new phenomenon, but it's still there, and again we need to all be aware of that and take that into account when we're analysing things. There was the well-known gap between building design and building performance, and of course that's been identified many times, but what we had was an interesting analysis of why that really might come about and how you might start to move closing that gap. And we also looked at household renovation rates. In the UK, there should be hundreds of thousands of deep renovations a year. And in actual fact, there are hundreds. Okay, so there's this huge, huge gap that we need to bring attention to and do something about. We looked at gaps between incentives for renewables and energy efficiency, the unfortunately ongoing gap between average practice and best practice. And we thought about changing the perception of energy enthusiasts from a minority that doesn't matter to a valuable community resource. And we've got an example of one of our authors gave of how these potentially valuable people are just dismissed. And this was at a low energy community, and it was using Facebook, and this was student community, and the students are saying, is there a time estimate on when we'll be able to monitor our utility usage? They were meant to be getting feedback and lots of information about what they were doing, and the answer from the apartment owners was, keep calm and drink Red Bull. It's an energy drink, this is an energy question. So, not really what they were hoping for.
Tina, you're so pessimistic.
But this glass is half empty.
No, I disagree. This glass is half full. As during the last 4 days, we have learned really a lot of ideas how to rethink delivery of energy efficiency. For example, we were especially fascinated how the elements of community sport models can help market energy efficiency. We have also learned a lot of other hints how to rethink energy efficiency delivery, and we'd like to share them with you.
Is it irresponsible to speculate? It would be irresponsible not to.
Good decisions need good information.
Politics is not the art of the possible. It consists in choosing between the disastrous and the unpalatable.
The best can be the enemy of the good.
And perhaps in contrast, start with what is right rather than with what is acceptable.
It is too easy to say, it's too complicated.
And we need to change the behaviour of the behaviour changers.
And do you know how to consolidate a 100-page report or many reports into one page?
Make it a very big page.
But seriously, what we have learned that there is still a gap between what we plan for energy efficiency and what we achieve in practice. And this is why many countries are refining their existing policies, and in order to help this process, they still would like to learn from each other. Especially, many countries are interested at present in new frameworks for financing energy efficiency. There have been also universal agreement in our panel that we have to move from the search of a silver bullet to a bouquet of energy policies. And our final conclusion, probably one of the most important conclusions, that the summary study of the European Council for Energy Efficiency remains still the best place to discuss energy efficiency: on the beach, or having a glass of French wine with French cheese, or at the dancing floor. Let's end. Okay. We hope that we see you at the next Summer Academy. We would like to thank you, say you goodbye,
Au revoir.
and до свидания. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bottle for me?
So thank you all. Yes, to start with, I would just like to say we were very surprised and also pleased to receive so many contributions in our panel. So it was a new panel also for eceee summer study, and we didn't really know at the beginning how many contributions we will receive. And starting from the abstracts, we had really difficulties to choose the contributions, and they were all really related to the subjects we were writing in our call for abstracts. So we are very happy. So thank you all for also your contributions. So for today, we say we already have a summary of what you all have written. So this is our introduction of our panel, and it's written in the proceedings, so you can read it when we will have time. And we said, yes, you are rather lazy and you did so good job, so we prefer just to pick up some of the elements of your presentations and make a summary with these elements. So that will be our summary. So what did we discuss in panel 3? So we think next time we will organize a kind of competition about the best, the clearer or the most complicated or the most nicest, most colorful picture of a process at local level. So this is just a kind of part of what we had. So there were really, really nice scheme of processes showing all the complexity of local processes. Now, if we start maybe from the beginning of the story, so we are talking about cities mainly and about the role of local governments. So what were the input from that side? So we say cities are the kind of the place where a lot of stakeholders come together and do together actions on the local level. And the cities, so it's very interdisciplinary. So that's this presentation from Eric Vidalenc was a way to show us which are the fields that we deal with when we talk about cities. So we imply lifestyles, we deal with urban planning, with the economic framework, and we have to consider all these issues when planning the local actions. And on another aspect, we also have a kind of vertical stage, depending on the level of responsibility a city, a local government might have on different actions. So we have different ways of acting. So the city can act as a public actor. So as an example, so follow the public activities, a policymaker, also an integrator of different actions. And the contributions we received were dealing with all these issues. Setting the targets, we heard a lot in the last also plenary sessions is always an issue at European level, at national level, and also at local level. So for this, you really have to consider all the framework around the city. So energy targets are always related to other targets. So these are always part of the picture. And so we had here an interesting presentation on a shrinking city, and the way the question was how to define a realistic and feasible, achievable target for a shrinking city.
I want to say something as well. You can't steal the whole show. We also had a presentation about large cities, and there was this good table which shows how different local authorities, mayors in different cities have different power to have an impact on different sectors. If we're having a project on certain sector. In some city, the local authority has more power on it than in other sectors. So in this case, it's buildings, but it could be anything. And the situation is different in different countries. Another example was how the criteria for development projects in neighborhood projects can vary. This is an example from Sweden, but there you can see that this is about sustainable neighborhoods, sustainable districts, and there the most important criteria is already energy. So that's what was good in this context. But then on the other hand, you can see that some other issues were not that important yet, even if they might be. Just to show that we have many more slides to come. Yes, well, that was the policy part. Then we had a couple of presentations about large-scale retrofits and deep renovations, and this is just showing two presentations of that part. First, there was this behavioral management. There are behavioral risks in deep renovations that you really have to take into consideration, both housing company, the constructors, and the tenants and people who are living there. So this is the chart is from the paper of Will Swan, which kind of shows that first the residents have to understand why something is being done, so that in the end they really want to use and want to learn to use their new equipment and new systems. And on the other hand, an example from Sweden shows that, from a housing company, shows that they really understood that they need to work together with the tenants to achieve their targets. Now I may let you begin again.
Okay, yeah, I think it's nice also to show some diagrams, so that's also to show the complexity of the processes in time. So here we had about Oxford a really nice presentation on showing also that we need a continuity in the different actions and programs that are set up at local level. It's anyway really interesting to see how many the number of actions really increased a lot in the years, and also the role of specific groups. So, for instance, the initiative Low Carbon Oxford, so which started in the 2010, but also the increasing number of local community groups. Sorry. So local community groups. So it's also here another diagram. It's so it always this was also specific for the UK context, where the local authority do not have a lot of capacities and also powers. So many actions were starting rather on a bottom-up level, so from groups that were organized themselves. And these local community groups act in a number of energy efficiency and generally energy measures implemented at local level. And the interactions between these groups and how these groups relate with the local authority and how the local authority relates to the national government were discussed in this presentation. I really don't manage it. I think that's the next one, no? Yes, oh. No, that was the next one. I'm sorry. Another issue, so working with local groups and participation process is something that happened also a lot. And here we had a really interesting presentation on assessing the impact of such participation measures. So it's always a lot of energy, it costs a lot also to organize these workshops. And we had a nice presentation and also a good analysis on the impact of such such activities on the policy and also on the attitude of the different stakeholders. So for instance, the first column showed that political stakeholders with these workshops could really get more awareness about climate change and also could go in the right direction.
Today we had a couple of really inspiring examples of how you can really take action on local level and really have an impact on domestic sector, get people interested in renovating their buildings to be more energy efficient. One of the examples was a presentation about home energy makeover contests in US, which showed an inspiring way to get the people in a district interested in renovating their buildings while signing for the contests, and even if they are not winning, they still learn how to do it and how good results you can get with it. Another kind of similar example was about eco open house events. This presentation had examples from UK and from Australia. This chart shows how rapidly the interest has been risen in these events. And we also heard that people who attend these events are newcomers mostly, so that it's not just preaching for the already converted. I suppose we have to speed up a bit, so maybe I'll let you finish the presentation. But this is an example of Ireland, really interesting presentation, read it.
It's about the impact of the measure, so that all these local actions really have an impact, so you should read this paper. So I go to the next one. We had one day really interesting on financing mechanism, and there were really complementary presentations, so we were also really happy to have this. So the presentation of the different mechanisms that can be applied at local level. So here is a nice picture that shows the interaction between the degree of renovation measure in relation with the savings achieved and the payback time that should be allocated to the measure. And we have with this presentation a lot of a detailed description of the financing mechanisms and how they can be implemented. This is about public procurement, one role of local authorities, and shows quite well that in some countries, so that was in southeastern Europe, there are still from the perspective of manufacturer, there's not a large demand for energy efficiency solutions from the part of the local authorities. So it's one example. Of course, it's not we cannot generalize that, but it's an important part. So what's the solution? Actually, we had a really interesting presentation from Jan about the role of the facilitator. His presentation is protected, so we couldn't access the file. So it's another invitation to go there and read the details on how a market facilitator and project facilitator can act as an intermediary between the client side, so it can be a private sector, but also a public authority, and the ESCO markets. So here we are. Thank you all for presenting your contributions. And sorry for so long.
Wow, thank you so much. I feel a bit under pressure after all these amazing presentations now, and since I'm only the substitute, I hope you will enjoy it anyway. Well, I must say there have been many stars, like many people really worth discussing in panel 4 on transport. So the real stars and the important people are here in the audience who gave amazing, excellent, high-quality presentations. So first of all, I would like to thank all the people who actively participated, came to talks, gave talks, wrote excellent papers. So first of all, thank you very much. Yeah, so as Barbara said, Jonathan was very unhappy that he had to leave this morning, so he asked me to give a short overview of the issues, of the things we learned in the transport panel, and I'm very happy to do that. So before we go into the details, when you come to eceee and you're working on transport, from time to time you feel a bit lost because everybody seems to be working on buildings, and you say, well, I'm working on these things driving around, and have you met any other working on that? But let's just remind ourselves that transport is the largest single contributor to end-use emissions, and more importantly, is the only one that is still growing. So I'm very much convinced that transport is an important issue, in particular at eceee, and I'm very much looking forward for the people who contributed this year to contribute more in 2 years, and all of you else to contribute as well. That would be great because there's so much potential in transport, and we really need to take action there since it's really a still growing sector. So what I'm going to do is just to give you a short overview of some of the important aspects that we learned over this week. So of course, I cannot cover everything, but to give you an idea for those of you who unfortunately did not come to the transport section, for what reason ever, a few things we did. Well, there is good news also in transport. Everybody seems to be disappointed about electric vehicles, but there actually are a lot of electric vehicles already in Norway. So there's really a high market share there, 10 times higher than in basically all other European countries or countries worldwide. We were discussing, well, what could be the reasons, and it turned out that there's basically two things who seem to be very important. There's a high level of subsidies for electric vehicles in Norway, and then there are a few additional incentives like the use of bus lanes and free parking in cities, which seems to really go on top of the strong subsidies, which make it highly attractive for a large share of people. And so like the good case that it is possible is Norway, where you really see, okay, there's a lot of financial subsidies right now, but for many Norwegian people, the electric vehicle seems to be just as normal as an internal combustion engine vehicle. Along with that, and also of high political relevance, is the question of, do we need public charging infrastructure? When you go to other conferences, to transport conferences, and talk to policymakers, everybody is convinced, well, if we just had enough charging stations, people would buy these electric vehicles. And we saw some very interesting evidence on that from Germany, and we discussed it also in context of the UK. When you really go into the statistics, you find that many people in European countries have single homes and are not living in apartment blocks. Of course, there are people living in apartment blocks, but it's only a certain share or maybe a minority. And the people living in single houses, they usually have garages, so they could charge very easily at home. And well, it turns out that at least for the next 10, 20 years for the introduction of electric vehicles, there does not seem to be a high need for large-scale installation of public charging infrastructure, which is an important point because there's, very limited money in the government. So, and then the government is always convinced, well, let's just build charging points and everything will be fine. But I think this is one of the points where eceee and scientists providing evidence-based knowledge really can provide good and scientifically sound evidence-based advice to policymakers to make a difference. When we already saw the great show from the behavior panel, and this is also an issue in the transport section, so maybe we could collaborate closer. And I must admit, I spent a few talks at the behavioral section to see what's going on there, because I believe there is a strong connection. When you think of buying cars, we have the labeling, so actually a vehicle buying decision, it's rather transparent for people. What is the actual fuel consumption? People know about the fuel consumption of their vehicle. They know it's directly related to the costs of the vehicle, to the fuel costs. But still, people keep on buying big and bigger vehicles like SUVs and so on. So it is very important to look at the social practices and to look at the individuals, because different people can have different reasons, and you really need to go into the details, need to talk to individuals, need to look at individual behavior, individual driving profiles, and so on. So that was a point where I saw a big connection to other aspects of eceee, to other sessions, but I think it's still very, very open, and much further research is required within the next years, and you're all warmly invited to contribute. And well, as always, as a scientist, we are complaining about data, that we need more data, and then we would understand basically everything. But we had a very nice contribution, which might also be helpful for other subjects, about using different kind of data sources that you wouldn't think of immediately. So when you talk about transport, you usually have transport surveys, and people try to use them. But we had a very nice proposition from guys from California that are using mobile phone data for India, where you don't have travel surveys. So the mobile phone data might not be as accurate for travel needs, but the data is basically for free. And so you can use that instead of real travel surveys, or use that to support travel surveys. And I think there's a message for all of us in there. So I guess you all are in need of good data, so why not think about data that has been collected elsewhere and that you might just use with some very, very slight modifications. And finally, it's not all about electric vehicles. Sometimes people really get bored and say, oh no, another talk about electric vehicles. But of course, they have a high impact on the overall transport-related CO2 emissions. But still, thinking in the very long term, if you really want to go down and reach the European goals for reducing CO2 emissions, the transport sector has to contribute very, very significantly. And that is, in the long-term run, you should think of other modes of transportation. So one of the presenters really picked that up and discussed the potential of bicycles. Well, of course, the CO2 reduction potentials of bicycles, in contrast to automobiles, is very limited. But thinking in the long terms, when you really want to change consumption, when you want to change behavior and patterns, stop thinking about, like, an electric vehicle is nice to save CO2 emissions, but we would all save much more in CO2 emissions if we switched from a car to a bicycle. So we learned a lot about the bicycles there, and we had very nice discussions and so many suggestions and comments, and I'm convinced that somebody will keep on, maybe the presenter will keep on working on bicycles. Yeah. So, well, to again come back to a last point, also connected to behavior, when you look at the transport sector, as in many other sectors, you see that the technology usually is there. So there's some best available technology, or some technology the engineers are currently working on to introduce it to the markets. There's so many aspects to reduce carbon dioxide emissions beyond simple automobiles. It's bicycles, it's lifestyle, and kind of the very long-term question for us as researchers, as practitioners, maybe as consultants or as policymakers is how can we really bring society to a stage where people start to change their consumption patterns and really make low-C transport and an energy society a normal thing. And so maybe I conclude as that, and hope you all are thinking on that. And again, thanks all for the presenters. And also I would like to thank Jonathan, who did a very great job as a panel leader of the transport panel. And yeah, I was very happy to substitute him here. I will continue all his applause when I come back home and tell him how you reacted. So thank you very much, and hope to see you all again in 2 years with a nice paper in the transport panel.
Okay, so hello everybody, and as our names are not up there because we are presenting together and don't have our start file, maybe we say real quick who we are. So I'm Anja Bierwitt from Wuppertal Institute, and I was panel leader in panel 5A.
Marina Economitou from panel 5B, Policies and Programs, and I work for the European Commission Joint Research Center.
And I'm Even Bjørnstad, also panel leader for panel 5B from Enova, Norway.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Boerakker from the DNV Klima. I did the panel together with Anja.
Yeah, and I think I say it for all of us, it was a pleasure for us to lead the panels, and it's a pleasure for us as well to summarize the two buildings panels here, 5A and B. And as we sat together brainstorming what to present tonight, we asked ourselves, what makes a good panel? And we found it is to have, let's see if it works, happy people. Takes a while. Deep, happy people with deep thoughts presenting to an interested audience. So that's actually that easy to come up with, this is what a good panel makes. So we decided to ask actually our speakers to summarize their presentations for us. So, and in words and in pictures, and this is what they came up with.
Well, I have to admit that during our preparation meeting, we gave ourselves the task to brainstorm on verbs starting with the prefix re, like restart, renew, so that it fits into the whole eceee spirit this year. And I'm not sure if all the words that we came up with do fit or are understandable by people outside this room, or indeed if they exist. But I'm glad that recode does exist, and I checked it on the dictionary. It means to put something in a different code. And the question here is, well, should we recode our ambitions? And you will all agree with me that our very skillful cartoonist here conveys a very clear message. He has a very clear vision in his head. It follows a path that reduces the energy code requirements in our building codes in a stepwise fashion, and it reaches 0 levels. But it doesn't stop there, it goes beyond. However, getting to 0 and plus energy levels, so buildings that deliver more energy than they need, shouldn't take forever, as our other cartoonist here is trying to tell us. And leapfrogging is the way to go. I'm not sure which stakeholder from our building chain is the snail and which one is the frog. I think that we can discuss this. Now, to achieve a sustainable building sector, we need to adapt over the time, we need to join forces, we need to bring together different elements, knowledge, market forces. All these are ingredients for success, and it is as if our building codes are a living organism, so they need nutrients to grow, to readapt, to change, and to develop. And here, with a bit of imagination, you may be able to see a little skier going down the slopes of the energy performance. And energy codes, you will all agree, can be a very powerful tool, given that high compliance levels are achieved. Actually, non-compliance has certainly a snowball-like effect, and it can be very disastrous. We also have to mind the gap, not between the train and the platform, like our British friends will say, but between intent, design performance, and actual real performance. So we really need to do something about that. And our building codes are only part of the recipe. We need packages, we need to bring together different policies, and we do have a good overview of policies that work at the moment and can advance energy efficiency in buildings for both new and renovated buildings. And we go to the next one.
Obviously the wrong button. will try to be even more tabloid. Property tax should reflect energy efficiency. Then we can all go home. Near zero energy buildings are cost optimal in 2020. Investing now in ambitious building energy efficiency gives multiple returns: monetary, climate, and social. This is not in the fruits department. In Germany, mainly private households invest in dwelling energy efficiency upgrades. Public funds, where are you hiding? And then for the renew. Roadmaps, roadmaps, roadmaps. It's time to integrate top-down targets and bottom-up social needs. And don't be afraid to go deep. You might find the future.
Okay, and there are some more pictures drawn by our presenters, and the comments are also made by the presenters. From the rebuild section, we have. I thought we were running. We had to have too much time. This is a new one. Yeah, again one. Okay, there we go again. Training of construction staff in nearly zero energy buildings and renewable energy is absolutely required. People are not barriers to ambitious upgradings, but they are potential drivers. And then we have some comments without pictures going with them. Energy efficiency measures, don't forget the rebound effect.
They're just not in the
Presentation?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they are in the presentation.
Sorry?
They are not on the paper, in the presentations they are.
Wow, okay. That was the one about rebound effect. And this one is, you can always find space for heat recovery. Then we move on with react, behave. Details matter. Behavior has a major impact on technology effectiveness. And another one from the same project. As in life, in retrofit, if you're going to do something, do it right. Embed, where your data dreams come true. The Green Deal is a bad deal.
You have to go back.
Too fast. Oh, sorry. A Green Deal is a bad deal at the moment. The Energy Performance of Buildings Directive is not a tool to alleviate poverty. Don't stop ongoing energy performance. Organizational aspects are a key barrier in renovation of multi-apartment owner-occupied buildings. Profitability should not be determined on purely economic parameters. Cost-optimal housing is energy efficient in a Mediterranean climate, but it's very different from the Alps. No. And building users are a source of knowledge for effective energy management and should be engaged rather than excluded.
Work now? I was confused here. Okay. So coming to reorganize. Energy efficiency is not just about technical and economical feasibility, but about organizational change. Pooling buildings for standardized upgrade arrangements reduce transaction costs. And energy efficiency policies should, of course, be implemented, but not in a dogmatic manner, not regardless to people's capacity to change their behavior. And there is a need for interdisciplinary research on the relationship between indoor environment and energy use. And to be smart, it is important to have realistic expectations on what energy management systems for residential customers can achieve. And demand-side efficiency affects the operation of power plants. The transition to smart grid is complex and the adoption patterns of technologies interact. And there are enough buildings that can hardly be insulated. We don't need to hardly insulate the rest. So from all of us, thank you very much to our speakers and presenters.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this funny way you presented the huge topic of your panels. And I really would like to ask who was the painter, because I think we should give him an extra prize. Okay, now we are coming to the appliance panel. Appliances also played a big role here, not only in panel 6, and you see the panel leaders here, but we also had a number of informal sessions and solution workshops on that topic, and let's see what they prepared for us.
Well, I think we forgot to put our names up there.
Yeah.
So you are?
Paula Fonseca from the University of Coimbra.
And I'm Egil Overholm from the Swedish Energy Agency, mostly. Okay?
Thank you. And we will give you some highlights about our panel. In the first day, we address cost of efficiency. We had nice learning curves and complex equations. And we came up with 2 questions. Price efficiency dynamics, would this work for Europe? And another one, what is missing to capture the significant cost-effective potential that still remains? And this is just for refrigerators. Then we got some clues on the second day, and we saw that eco-design and labeling measures take too long to be implemented, and there are several factors, from complexity, high contentiousness, and people. People get sick, people get pregnant, change work, lack of resources, lack of data, and so on. And there is a need for monitoring and surveillance of the market to define good and effective policies. And yesterday, the importance of testing standards was on the agenda on panel 6. International comparison is not possible, and there is an urgent need for harmonization. And if you want to know why are French households consuming 600 kilowatts per hour more than German, you just have to read the paper. And finally today, we focus ICT and smart homes and smart grids. And still another question. We are moving towards smart things, but are we using less electricity? Oh,
Okay.
that was the last one.
Okay, before we go on with the second part of our presentation, which is quite different from the first, we would like to thank all those who contributed with excellent papers, and not at least the reviewers. They did a marvelous job. So, Paula and I were a bit envious on all the other contests going on here. So we thought we would have one within our panel. And after several weeks, months of hard research, we came up with a couple of categories in which we thought we would find winners. And we did. In some cases, very obvious, and in other cases, there was a tough race. Okay, let's start with the first. We really admired those who could manage the intellectual communication within this paper writing, and but they made it. The shortest title, these 3 words, all the others had many, many more words. So, and it was interesting too, because it attracted a lot of people to the session, because they wondered, what do they mean with this? And as Paula said, go back and read. Okay, the next one is the best film reference. There were not so many contestants there, but this one was a clear winner. The most contradictory title. This also draw a crowd to our session. Well, I must say that this author did a very good job in explaining this in 15 minutes. And some in the audience said they had understood at least something. But it is a very interesting paper, actually. And some of the basis for what we can do in the future in Europe. But go back to the proceedings and read them. Okay. The smallest energy, and here we're discussing microwatts per square centimeter, things like that. And this took us a level down, which not many of us had experienced before. So it's quite interesting, and I also think it won one of the contests in the poster session. So it's, if this author, these were just one of each abbreviation. They were used constantly during the paper. So if we had used the full names, the paper would have been twice the length. And that's all for us. And we thank you, all of you who came and gave us very good questions, and we had good discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your really funny presentation, and I think it's fascinating how many ideas you developed after such hard work in the panels. It's really marvelous. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is not Miriam. Those of you present at panel 7 would notice. I am here as a stand-in. She had to leave early. She was not aware she was going to do a presentation, but she made the presentation, and I promised to do my best to give an oral version of what she told me. And this is the first step in doing what the eceee does best, is to spread the word when we go home. Now, there could have been a co-panel leader here tonight to take over, but she never turned up because she was busy generating the next generation of eceee members. So on their behalf, I will start the presentation. This is through the eyes of Miriam as she saw the week. Now, you cannot have an evaluation panel without statistics and numbers. So, well, 17 of the presentations is what we had. We had 8 nationalities represented. The panel participants averaged 33.9. I don't know who made up the 9, but the slides presented, well, I think Miriam ran out of fingers and feet because she stopped at 260. Then she gave up. Now, as all panel leaders and co-panel leaders do, they prepare very, very well for many hours, many days, many months. And Miriam had presented or prepared questions in case there should not be any from the audience. However, it turned out to be quite unnecessary. She actually never got a chance to ask a question. So, one of the interesting facts that you do not expect to come across when you have a certificate is that it actually does not tell the truth. You are likely to be performing much better than what is said on the certificate, especially if you're in a poor house or in a house where you prefer to wear lots and lots of coats. So don't trust the certificate, was the message from one of the presenters. An interesting fact that metering can provide us with is Germans. They actually rise at the same time in the weekends as they do on a normal work day. I know from personal experience also you can check whether that cleaner has actually been there when they said they were and how many hours it did. Interesting fact number 3, and this is where consultants really pay attention. Somebody dared mention the money word and suggested that if you want a good evaluation, you should also spend a little bit of money, preferably somewhere between 3 to 6%. Buzzwords. Now, I'm afraid I can't provide you with an explanation of all these. I will refer to the panel 7 leaders, because I sneaked off to some other presentations and panels, among others, the transport panel. But the buzzwords in session 7 were theory of planned behavior, hedonic pricing, matched pairs, choice models, agent-based modeling, segmentation, cost and price. I think cost and price is prevalent everywhere. Don't despair. I'm sure there's somebody from panel 7 still present, and they will provide a good explanation of all of these words. Just ask them. Now, the challenge as an evaluator is that sometimes you have the data, but you don't have the model. Sometimes you have the model, but you don't have the data to fit it. And that's where we work hard in panel 7 to make it all match. I guess a happy evaluator is one that has data and a model. So, Miriam's conclusion was, eceee is fun, but exhausting. Monday, when she arrived, she had been preparing very hard, together with her co-panel leader. This is what she looked, pale but prepared, ready to take on the battle. Friday, just before she left, she was filled up with information. Ready to go home and digest for several months until the next time she gets to be a panel leader. Now, don't let that picture discourage you. It is really, 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 really great fun being a panel leader, and we strongly encourage it. So on behalf of Miriam, I wish you a goodbye and hope to see you again next summer. But I would also like to have the presenters in panel 7, please stand up. If there are any left that haven't left early. Yes. And instead of applauding me, can we please applaud the presenters?
Okay, thanks a lot to Kirsten and Miriam. And now we are coming to the last panel. It's panel 8 on dynamics of consumption.
So, hello everybody, my name is Isabelle Garabio Moussaoui. But before speaking myself, I prefer to let Kirsten say a word. So it was great to be a panel leader in panel 8. I'm so sorry I can't be here together with you. So, first, I'd like to tell you the story of the panel 8 that held in this room, the plenary room. When Kirsten and I arrived in this room the first time, we were really impressed. It was so dark, so cold, so big, and so empty. But that, it was before. With the help of all the presenters and with the help of the audience, we have collectively developed a practice of this room. So first, we tried and succeeded to domesticate the air conditioning system. In switching it off. So now you know why you are so hot now in the room. So please don't switch the air conditioning on for the moment, because you will see that I propose a solution at the end of my presentation. Yes, social scientists can propose solutions. So it was our first step. Secondly, the presenters transformed the darkness of the room into the brightness of ideas. So thanks very much to each of them and to the collective group that was built in this room. So thank you very much to the presenters. And finally, the audience created a warm atmosphere and filled the room with their body and their mind. So thanks to each of you. So what have we discussed about in this room and in this panel? So I tried to catch some words that are flying in this room. Energy, of course, we discussed about energy. But we saw that energy is not a simple matter. There are lots of definitions, actions, objectives that express the relationship to energy. So I will not read all the word, of course. But energy and energy savings can also disappear, diluted into the principle of reality. Reality complexifies the analysis, but also gives a more adequate description of what happens with energy or without energy issues. So we discussed a lot about paradox, life's priorities, and how energy is integrated in life. As we seriously use the principle of reality, we have analyzed the practices consuming more or less energy. And we have gone beyond the complexity, using some variables and mechanisms that can help us to arrange the mess of the reality. And because energy is diverse, we need to develop a more systemic approach. The energy system, the energy regime, really frames the practices and the perceptions of energy. So we saw that in the panel 3, the presenters like very much the process. In the panel 8, presenters like systems. Arrows also, and all sorts of connection links. And of course, we discussed about people, and we didn't forget the engagement of people in the practices, in the innovation process, and in the systems. So people to take into account are not only end users, consumers, but all the actors involved in the system and in the dynamics of consumption. So to summarize, if we had only one advice to give from the panel 8 this year, we could say, please support people and researchers when they want to open the windows. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, and I see the last bottle has left, and now we have some time for a general discussion, and I think we got so many ideas in these presentations, and thank you very much again for these funny and really exciting presentations you made from your panels. And for the discussion, I would like to ask all panel leaders coming back on the stage and being here for being questioned, but we also invite all of you to ask questions or to give ideas to everyone, and maybe you also have some ideas on topics which were not discussed here and should be the topic of the next summer studies, though I really cannot believe, looking at all these issues we had here in the morning sessions and in the afternoon, that anything of energy efficiency was not discussed here anywhere, but maybe you have some ideas on that too. Therefore, come back on the stage and we will have some time for a discussion and before we leave for dinner and the party.
Make more space for food later.
Okay. Who wants to start? And I think I must not repeat the rules. Short questions, short comments, but I think you know that, and maybe some of you are too tired to make really long questions now after so many days of discussions.
Anybody not tired? Raise your hand.
I'm not tired, but I'm a liar.
Okay, Stefan.
Thanks, Stefan Thomas again. It was a wonderful conference, but and I understand that industry is not part of this conference anymore because there's industrial summer study. But what I was missing was more papers on the tertiary sector, commercial and public sector. So it's just one, suggestion.
Thank you.
Yes, Cedric from Geneva. Yesterday we had a very nice informal session on energy efficiency education. We say we want to create thousands of jobs, but we need to form these people, and it's a real big challenge if you want to achieve the energy efficiency goals. So maybe a suggestion of panel for the next eceee, education and formation on efficiency.
Well, thank you all. And I wanted to ask the question, previously we had a discussion on financing, and I wanted to have your impression in the different panels. Was the finance an issue, or is this something worse to make a separate panel out of it, or was it part of your individual panels?
We had one paper in panel 7 with the idea of generating financing from sales of emission permits. I think financing is extremely important because it takes investment, but it's also very boring.
Not if you're a financier. We do also have a paper in the proceedings which is about an equity vehicle so that you invest in we had a paper in the proceedings which is about an equity vehicle for investing in things like microgrids that can be packaged up for, you know, real investors, people who just put money into things and expect to get money back at some stage in the future. So, and that led into something else, which forgive me, my brain is slightly tired. I think it's an area that comes up in various panels from time to time. And because I've certainly done one on investment in energy efficiency and energy efficient commercial buildings before. So I think it's important. But whether we could actually justify a panel of its own, I don't know. But then, as with the education, there is a tendency to write papers if people know that people are interested in them, rather than, at the moment, you know, I did it on commercial buildings because I knew we were interested in commercial buildings. So if we actually put these topics forward, maybe the interest would come out and people would do more research on them.
Well, we had I think 2 papers on ESCOs, but as I learned, contracting, they don't want contracting to be named just simply a tool for financing. So I'll not saying we're having financing papers, but it's appearing in at least half of the papers somehow and somewhere. To have a panel on financing might extract some of these informations to that panel, and to be honest, to give the broader picture, I would say financing is important, but for all of the panels.
Yeah, I fully agree. Someone else? Yes, I completely agree. In panel 3, we also had one day filled with presentations about energy performance contracting, financing models, business models. And I think it was really important that it was in connection to other local actions and not just in separate panel. But I can tell that that was one of the days that we had the biggest audience. So from that point of view, I think it's an important subject and interesting as well.
In our panel, we have had several presentations on how to leverage the money into energy efficiency. Several presenters spoke about the ideas, what could be the new policy tools to leverage public and private investment. So I think that this is probably one of the most prospective topics in the future. And what I said in my financing presentation, the buildings panel, what I would like to repeat now, what we started talking about like 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, how significant potential for energy efficiency is. Then we were talking and we are trying to convince policymakers how cost effective this potential is. So we're telling, oh, you know, 30% of the potential is cost effective. These are negative costs. These are golden mines which we have to harvest. But at the same time, at each conference we talk how significant barriers for energy efficiency are, and that the rates of energy efficiency penetration are low and we have to speed up, etc., etc. We discussed at each conference what could be the potential policy tools, what have been the experiences with them, which elements we have to change, but still we don't know actually how much do we invest in energy efficiency. Do any of you know a single number how actually do we invest in any of your countries into energy efficiency or renewable energy? There have been no significant research in this area. We don't know who invests. We don't know whether this is private sector. We know that there are these policies like providing grants, preferential loans. We know that they are targeted to households, to corporations that take them, but we don't know the proportions. We don't know whom to focus on. We don't know how to leverage this investment from this private sector. Which are the factors which enable this leverage? So I think that this is extremely prospective topic, and we can also actually frame it to a separate panel. And we would like to convince policymakers to invest more, to provide more funds. We have to convince them how to do that, because they always say this is too expensive. We have to provide too many grants, we have to compensate too much for buy down rates, and we have to show that with small amount of public funds we can leverage significant amount of private finance, but we have to show how, and we have to identify these floors and we have to compare them. I think it's a very good topic.
Well, a really very important topic here, and I think also at the industrial summer study. Other topics?
Erwin Cornelis of Vito. I actually have a question for the founding fathers and mothers of eceee, as eceee is celebrating its 20th anniversary. I was wondering how the debate on energy efficiency evolved in our time.
It's a big question for a short answer. But I think if I look backwards, when we started eceee, there was a lot of discussion. Well, is there really a potential for energy efficiency? And afterwards, how big part of that potential is cost effective? And has energy efficiency a role to play in the long-term energy development? All these things are solved today. I think most people agree there is a huge potential. Energy efficiency is crucial in the long-term scenarios. What we are discussing today is mostly how do we best implement? What kind of policies and messages are needed to implement, and what kind of technologies and solutions? So we really has changed the agenda. Energy efficiency is much more in the heart of energy policies today than it was 20 years back. So we are, the agenda has moved, and it has moved in the right direction, but we are not there yet. We have to move even further.
Yesterday we organized an informal session, in part based on something that President Barroso said in Parliament last week. He said, the US has the shale gas revolution, Europe has the energy efficiency revolution. He said this last week in Parliament. Okay. What I would like to know is that when we had this informal session, we said that this was the start of the revolution. In fact, but I'd like to know, in terms of the papers that you had, do you find your papers were really the leading edge of the revolution? Do you really find that we were pushing the bounds as much to get us moving off into this new direction, to follow Mr. Barroso?
But of course we had the leading edge. It's difficult, isn't it? Do we know that we've got the leading edge? I think we certainly have an insight into what the gap is to get onto that leading edge. And we've also got some frameworks to go forward with to fill it. We had a summary session in our last one, and I gave the, I used to be a project manager before I retrained into energy and environment and things like that. And was taught this, all the techniques of critical path analysis and all of this sort of thing. And there used to be a cartoon going around which was stuck up on every project manager's wall, which was this hugely complicated flowchart. And then the final goal. And just before the final goal was an empty box. And the question is, what's in the empty box? And that's the leap of faith.
I don't know if it's a revolution, and I mean, anyway, just with buildings you will never make a revolution. As we heard, transport is one of the main polluters still, and still growing. So I think if we could make it all together, but a revolution, making SUVs driving electric, I don't know. So I think a revolution would be if I have a local presenter here who says, we stopped building streets for cars, but we start, build our streets back to have more bicycle lanes. And that, all over the city. That would be a kind of leading. And so maybe someone will come for the transport panel next time saying that.
If we're talking about revolution as a French guy, maybe I will say some words. So revolution is a bottom-up event. And I can say in our panel 3, we're really looking at these local actions. And so they are so different. They can start in different types of cities, with different types of people, on different contexts. And actually, it's maybe not one revolution, but many revolutions together, because everyone has to do his own revolution. So maybe the aim would be to join all these forces together, even if all cities have different contexts and different processes. And I think what we had in panel 3 was really a kind of trying to find methods to understand these processes and to get all this knowledge together. So I'm really happy to have these contributions here. And I think from our point of view, we had really, really good papers. And I think this knowledge needs to be put forward, and we can say it's a kind of revolution, I hope.
I thank again all the presenters, all the panel leaders for their really marvelous presentations and coming back on the stage. And it's really a challenge to be on the stage, not only because of the air conditioning, which is not working, but also because of the lights. And there it's not easy, but we are not there so often. Okay, thanks again, and I think... Well, and before leaving, I would like to give the last words again to our president, to Peter Bach. Thank you very much, and enjoy yourself today, the last evening here in these nice surroundings. Thank you.
Yes, I will also here close the last formal session by thanking all of you first for coming, and then some of you for writing papers and present them. But I will also thank you all for your very active participation in the different sessions. I have never been for a summer study where we have had so many informal sessions and so many people participated in the different informal sessions. So I think all of you has been very active from early morning to late night. I also think that it's because of you, all the participants, the people who have written papers, and the panel leaders, we have been able to make this summer study to a big success. So I want to thank you all for that. eceee look forward to work together with you in the future. Without a close cooperation and work together with our members and the network we have established at the summer study, we will not be able to do our work. We will work together with you in our daily work. We have a website with a lot of information. We arrange seminars sometimes in Brussels, and we are also in a process now to establish ambassadors in some of the member states. So this is one way to work together with you. And second element is, of course, the coming summer studies. We have already heard that we will have an industrial summer study in May next year, and in 2 years' time we will have the normal summer study again. So we really want to work together with you. In this respect, I would also say, if you are not already a member of eceee, please be. Without members, we cannot do our work. Members is a way to create income, of course, but that's not the only reason. Member is also what will give us our legitimacy, our basis to work on, and our strengths to speak on behalf of the energy efficiency community. So the number of members are important. So, and if you already are a member yourself, you should also go back and see, is there anyone in your circles at home which should be a member of eceee in the future? Finally, we also need to work together with you on the promoting on energy efficiency. And I'll just only mention 2 things, which has been also in the heart of the summer study here. The first one is a strong implementation of the Energy Efficiency Directive. The implementation is not going on in Brussels. That's going out in the member states. And it's exactly there you are. So we need to work together with you on that. And second element I could mention is that we also have to work together with you on formulating the 2030 policies and targets for EU on energy efficiency. By these words, I will close this session, but we are not closing the summer study yet. We will have first a dinner, and in fact, before the dinner, there will be a drink. So, and after the drink, there will be a dinner, and then there will be a party. I hope you all will enjoy that and have a nice evening and a safe trip back tomorrow. Thank you.